Welcome to this episode of the Great Lives series. Today, we're going to look at the story of Alan Turing. He broke a code the Nazis believed was unbreakable, work that historians estimate shortened the Second World War by years and saved millions of lives. He is now widely regarded as the founding father of computer science and artificial intelligence itself. And less than a decade after the war ended, his own government convicted him of a crime for simply being who he was, and chemically altered his body as a condition of staying out of prison. This is the story of Alan Turing, the man who helped save his country and the country that destroyed him for it. Alan Matheson Turing was born on the 23rd of June 1912 in London and educated at Sherborne School, a traditional English boarding school, where he showed early, obvious brilliance in mathematics and science that most of his teachers, focused on a more classical education built around Latin and literature, didn't quite know what to do with, and occasionally actively discouraged. At Sherborne, he formed a close, deeply important friendship with a fellow student named Christopher Morcom, a relationship that shaped Turing profoundly. The two boys bonding over science and mathematics in a way Turing rarely experienced with anyone else at school. When Morcom died suddenly in 1930 from complications of bovine tuberculosis, still only a teenager, Turing was utterly devastated, and by several accounts, the loss pushed him toward the questions that would define his entire career. Questions about the nature of mind, thought, and whether the workings of a brain, and even the possibility of a mind surviving death in some form, might in principle be understood or one day even reproduced by a machine. Turing went on to King's College, Cambridge, and in 1936, while still only in his early 20s, published a paper that would quietly reshape the entire 20th century. The paper described a theoretical device, now known simply as a Turing machine, capable of performing any calculation that could be broken down into a precise set of logical steps, an abstract mathematical model of what it even means to compute something at all. It was, at the time, a purely theoretical idea addressing an obscure problem in formal logic known as the decision problem, one most people outside pure mathematics had never heard of. But it laid the essential theoretical groundwork for every computer built in the decades that followed. He continued his studies at Princeton University in the United States, earning his doctorate there in 1938 under the mathematician Alonzo Church, before returning to England just as war with Germany was becoming unavoidable. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, Turing was recruited to Bletchley Park, the secretive British code-breaking headquarters north of London, where thousands of people, many of them women working in roles the era rarely gave public credit for, labored in near total secrecy for years. His task was to help break Enigma, the encryption system the German military used to protect its communications. A cipher so complex the Germans considered it effectively unbreakable, changed daily, and capable of an almost incomprehensible number of possible settings. Building on earlier code-breaking work by Polish mathematicians who had made crucial early progress before the war and shared it with the British as Poland fell, Turing led the team in Hut 8 that designed the bombe, an electromechanical machine capable of rapidly testing possible Enigma settings, turning a task that would have taken human codebreakers years to complete by hand into one that could often be completed in a matter of hours. Historians still debate the precise numbers, but common estimates suggest the work done at Bletchley Park, with Turing at its intellectual center, shortened the war by roughly 2 years and saved millions of lives that would otherwise have been lost to a longer conflict. For decades afterward, none of it could be spoken about publicly at all. The work remained classified under official secrecy for so long that Turing died without the wider world ever knowing what he had actually done for his own country, or how much of the war's outcome had quietly depended on it. After the war, Turing continued pushing the boundaries of what a machine could theoretically do. He worked on early designs for what would become one of the first true stored program computers, first at the National Physical Laboratory and later at the University of Manchester, translating his pre-war theoretical work into genuine, functioning hardware for the first time. In 1950, he published a paper titled Computing Machinery and Intelligence, introducing what the world now calls the Turing test. a deceptively simple proposal for judging whether a machine could be said to think, if a human conversing with it through text alone could not reliably tell whether they were talking to a person or a machine. The machine, in a meaningful sense, passed. Decades before anyone had heard the term artificial intelligence, coined only a few years later, Turing had already outlined the central question the entire field would spend the rest of the century, and arguably still spends today, trying to answer. He also made significant, less widely known contributions to mathematical biology, developing a theory to explain how repeating patterns, like the spots on a leopard or the stripes on a fish, could emerge naturally from simple underlying chemical processes, an idea that mathematicians and biologists continue to build on today. In 1952, Turing reported a burglary at his home to the police. In the course of the investigation, officers learned that Turing was in a relationship with another man, Arnold Murray, and rather than simply pursuing the burglary, turned their attention to Turing's private life instead. Homosexuality was, at the time, a criminal offense in Britain, and Turing, who never denied the relationship and reportedly saw no reason he should have to, was charged and convicted of what the law called gross indecency. He was given a choice between imprisonment and probation, on the condition that he undergo a course of hormonal treatment intended to suppress his libido, a process that amounted to chemical castration, causing physical side effects including breast tissue growth that humiliated a man who had spent his entire career priding himself on rigorous, private self-control. Turing chose the treatment over prison. The conviction cost him his security clearance, ending his ability to continue the classified consulting work he had quietly continued doing for the British government in the years after the war, effectively erasing him from the field he had helped invent. Alan Turing died on the 7th of June 1954 at his home in Wilmslow, Cheshire, from cyanide poisoning, found by his housekeeper the following morning. A half-eaten apple was found beside his bed, and an inquest at the time ruled his death a suicide, fitting a narrative many were quick to accept, given the humiliation and isolation of his previous 2 years. His own mother always maintained she believed it was a tragic accident, connected to chemicals he kept at home for his own scientific experiments, something he had done for years without incident. And in the decades since, at least one respected historian has argued the physical evidence is genuinely more consistent with accidental inhalation than deliberate suicide. The full truth of his final hours has never been settled beyond dispute, and likely never will be. For more than half a century afterward, Turing's name remained known mainly within specialist circles. His wartime role still classified for decades after his death. His conviction still an open, unaddressed injustice that the British government simply left alone. That began to change in 2009 when the British Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, issued a formal public apology on behalf of the government for how Turing had been treated, calling it, in his own words, appalling. In 2013, Queen Elizabeth II took the rare step of granting Turing a posthumous royal pardon, an honour reserved for only the most exceptional cases. In 2017, an Act of Parliament, informally known as the Alan Turing Law, extended posthumous pardons to thousands of other men historically convicted under the same discriminatory laws, using Turing's own name and story to finally correct a wrong that had outlived him by more than 60 years. Today, Alan Turing's face appears on the British £50 note, alongside diagrams referencing his own theoretical work, a quiet, permanent acknowledgement from the same government that once destroyed his career, and, quite possibly, his life. He is now almost universally recognized as the founding intellectual father of both computer science and artificial intelligence. The man who mathematically defined what a computer even is before a usable computer had ever been built, and who broke a code that changed the outcome of the deadliest war in human history, while receiving, in his own lifetime, almost none of the recognition either achievement deserved and considerable punishment for who he simply was. If this story moved you, do 2 quick things before you go. Hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode of the Great Lives series.